Hey everyone, and welcome to the Fantasy Podcast.
And less than 4 seconds in. I told Josiah it would take 10 seconds for it to go off the rails, but 4, that's a new record.
My name is Andy Collier, and I'm with my co-host Andy Peliquin, and today we are honored to have our guest Jose Cuervo, and we're going to be talking about his book, The Hod King. No, just kidding. His name is Josiah Bancroft, and he is an Orbit author, and he's the author of The Hod King, The Books of Babel, and we are going to be talking about, I keep wanting to say divination, divide, but Andy will go into that in more complexity as he usually does. But welcome to the show, Josiah. From Texas.
It's all right.
It's an H.
Yeah, no, my mother calls me Jose, so whatever.
Jose, you obviously are Mexican.
so I had the skin tone, yes, indeed.
Yes.
I have to ask, is that an Iron Giant t-shirt?
No, it's not. It's like one of the shirts I got from I was on the con circuit for a long time, and it was one of the shirts I picked up from. I think their name is like Spaghetti Design, something like that. Spaghetti Monster. They're out of DC. I forgot the exact name, but it does look like the Iron Giant, though.
It does, except for he's missing his right arm, but that's all.
Yes.
That's cool. So, Stevie likes to do this thing where he throws our guests in the deep end and asks them to tell us something cool that happened in the last week.
Yes.
So, what's something cool that's happened to you in the last week, Josiah?
Well, I was like, on Friday night, I got to speak in front of the Philadelphia Science Fiction Community Club. I forgot their exact name because I'm terrible with monikers and stuff. But I got to talk to a nice group of wonderful people I'd never met before, and that was a lot of fun. One of the things I don't get enough of as a new dad is adult conversation time, like talking to people. And so it was like an experience that I really greatly valued. Like there was no agoo or gauze, no one spit up. There was only one poop, and it was mine. I was my bad. It's like it was a great evening, and I just one of the things that I love about being a writer is connecting with the local communities. And this is one of the first times I've been able to do that in Philadelphia since I've been here. So that was great. It was great.
That is awesome. I missed that. It's been a while since I've hung out with authors, other than these things that we do online. But how long have you been in Philadelphia?
6 years. So I'm really slow.
Just a little bit. It took a little longer than normal.
Yeah, it did. I really didn't know about them until recently because I'm also not very observant. So.
That's cool. It's always before I moved to the town I'm in, Kamloops in British Columbia, I Googled, local authors and stuff like that. I haven't found too many. I've found a few, but it's always nice to meet up with authors because even if you're not the same genre, there's something about authors who they're kind of the only ones who understand the art form and what it means to be an author.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's refreshing. You sit in your little office long enough, you do kind of go stare, you get a little nutty and crazy, and so it's nice to be reminded that you're not the only one doing this, and the experience is pretty, universal in many ways.
And everyone else is equally crazy.
Yes. Well, I had some stiff competition, to be honest with you. I mean, yeah, we're all crazy.
How did poop come up in the speech? That's my.
It didn't come into the speech. It came out of my pants. No, it really didn't come up. There was no poop. It was a poop-free evening. No, it was very nice.
We're gonna get along, Josiah. We are gonna get along on the podcast.
I think it was my mistake because I told him that you tend to bring up things like that, so he was just trying to become one with the podcast, really acclimate to your style of conversation, Stevie.
Not at all. I mean, it really is about being a new dad. You just lose all that sort of filter, But.
That's true. That is very true. Or at least your hair is done. You don't have big dark circles under your eyes. So score 1 for that.
Well, that's why I'm sitting in the basement so you can't see them. If the light is low enough, I look pretty good.
Very true. Very true. That's the same for me. It's the opposite with Stevie. He needs that bright light behind him. Look at what he's looking like now with all that light on his face. So
gorgeous,
so majestic,
beautiful,
so gubernatorial.
Look at these locks too.
So, Stevie, what's something cool that happened to you in the last week?
So I do have some really cool news. First of all, can everyone hear my voice pretty well with the phone? It's on speakerphone. So I'm trying to get my face closer to the phone. But anyway, really cool stuff. I did get the first cover back for book 1. So it was another $600, but I have this guy under contract to do 4 book covers. So he has to do 4 book covers or I get my money back. So I won't be switching artists this time. It is fantastic. I absolutely love it. It's exactly what I wanted. I think it pops. I think it's weird. I think it really captures what the Bizarre Blade is all about. And when I get back to Texas, I will do a screen share with the typography because I'm getting the typography back today, which I am really excited about. Something about putting typography on a book cover just kind of finalize. I mean, it does finalize it, but it's just, it's one of the most exciting parts of being an author, in my opinion, is getting that cover done. And
Absolutely.
Yes, very excited. And he's very creative, and I give him creative license to just mess with it and make it weird and awesome. And so I'm excited to see what he does with book 2's cover. Another exciting thing that happened to me, which happened to me today, is I realized that I will be writing 5 books in the series and not 4 books in the series. And for some reason, it was just during my leisure time, as does Inspired Thoughts. They come always on leisure time. I was like, oh my God, I know what to do for book 4, and I know what to do for book 5. Just boom, right in my head. I was like, I can't put this all in book 4. I have to do 5 books. So super excited about that. The thing is, I have a set date for the series, which is May 7th, and which is a Tuesday. So I have to really crack down and just get some writing done. There's no playtime for me anymore. And I always work better with a timeline, like a set when that's how I was in school. I waited till the last minute, and then that's how I got all my work done. So
that's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very excited. I'm actually super excited to get back to writing. So I should be done editing Golden Blade, which is the 3rd book, tomorrow, and then I'll probably get to writing 5,000 words a day. So yeah. And if you're watching this and you want to be an advanced reader, I do have open spots for my street team. Andy, anyone you know that needs to be an advanced reader, I got them. So.
That sounds good, Stevie. I'll pass them to you.
Thank you. I know they're busy working with you, but that is my good news. Besides being in the beautiful state of California,
where the sun does shine. Unlike, the sun's been up here in Canada. I would say that's probably one of the great things that's happened this week is that the temperature has risen above -0 degrees Celsius. It is now in the positives for a few hours a day. So I went for a walk outside for the first time in like 4 months yesterday. It was magical and very cold still.
Yeah. Do you guys want to see the balcony?
You want to rub it in, Stevie?
Yeah, I'll show you California weather.
Let's definitely see it.
Okay, so all right.
That is pretty cool.
There's the water.
That looks nice.
There's the Barnes & Noble, the movie theater, and there's the mountains. So, really good for writing inspiration. And then I get back in my little hole in here and stay in my introverted little hole.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that's cool. So my news for the week, aside from the fact that now probably the main awesome thing is that literally 20 minutes before the podcast started, I sent book 1 of the Silent Champions off to the editor, which means by mid-April, I'll have it back and ready to put into a cover and start sending out to advanced readers and promoting it and doing awesome stuff. The covers, I got all 6 of them a couple months ago. Super excited to get that out. I've also gotten the typographist working on the cover for the box sets for the Defenders of Legend series. So that's coming out in June. So I got to get those covers all ready to go. But
which is the box set?
It's the 2 box sets for the Hero of Darkness series, the box set for Heirs of Legend, Sorry, Heirs of Destiny, Queen of Thieves, and Silent Champion. So it'll be basically, it's a series of box sets because all of my stories are set in the same world, as many of you know. So they'll all be included in the series of box sets. So there will be 5 box sets by the beginning of next year. So very excited to get that. Oh, and I got a new cover for Child of the Night Guild, which I will be releasing when I re-release the series in October. Fingers crossed. It's going to be awesome.
Very nice. Love it.
Oh, and Josiah, what did you speak about in Philadelphia? Did you already say?
Long things, yeah. It's gone to the mists of time at this point. Probably just myself.
Yeah. That's what I like to do.
You know, it's easy to riff upon. And I'm never wrong. Well,
that's awesome. All right, so today's topic is actually one that was half suggested by Josiah, mostly suggested. We'll give him the credit for this one. He was talking about genres and how there's these classifications for genres. So I was just actually seeing on Facebook someone was talking about how they don't enjoy reading dark fantasy, and I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about what exactly they were talking about, because if you look at dark fantasy, there's no real definition of what it is. There are some loose definitions, horror-themed fantasy, dealing with more monsters, supernatural stuff, as opposed to the more classic epic stuff. But it's this definition, this distinction that people use to say, I do like something or I don't like something. But even many of the books that fall under that category don't necessarily belong there. Like my Hero of Darkness series, I classified it as dark fantasy, and I still consider it that, but it's more epic fantasy. So someone who says, oh, I don't like dark fantasy, I won't read it, will miss out, because it's this distinction that they've created in their mind. And that got me thinking about us humans, right? We've created these distinctions in our minds. Josiah, Stevie, tell me something that you don't like across the board. Anything.
I don't like Josiah.
You know, I don't like beets, like across the board. Like I don't care what you do to it. I'm not going to eat a beet. You can roast it. You can pickle it. You can put it in a borscht. I don't like beets.
Okay, that's good. That's a great example. I said the same thing about beans. Now, there is a
all beans, all beans,
all
beans, white beans. Like you don't like any legume
across the board. Now, I will eat
peanuts,
roasted chickpeas. Yeah, exactly. Peanuts, hummus, and Mexican-style refried beans. So I've created this distinction in my mind of something that I don't like, and I wonder. Like I've thought, okay, I'm missing out on so many amazing dishes because I don't like it. Now I don't like it. But because things are beans or lentils or chickpeas or legumes, in my head, I've created this antagonistic relationship with it. So something that's a food, it's small, it's funny. But now think about this. I don't like religious people. Boom. Massive distinction right there. That's an example, Stevie.
Oh, like, oh my God.
But so by saying that, I've immediately closed myself off to a massive subsection of humanity, of society, missing out on all the awesome stuff, on all the awesome refried beans and hummus of the people world.
This whole time, I thought you were saying you didn't like bees, and then I was like, why are you putting bees on this? I was like, that doesn't make sense, Andy. I don't like bees.
Yeah.
It took me a second.
But it's like we have created these distinctions in our own minds, and this is the foundation of racism, bigotry, prejudice, all of that. It's kind of terrifying how we continue to buy into it day after day.
Well, I think it's very appealing to define yourself by what you are not, and it's very difficult to define yourself by what you are and what you believe. And so it's like if I define myself as a non-beet eater, like that would be very easy. You know, but defining yourself more positively is difficult. And one of the things that, you know, when I talk about beets, like my current habit is at least once a year, I eat a beet. I just continue to do it because my goal in life is not to get to the end of the game and be like, here are all the things I did not enjoy, but like, here are all the things I cultivated an understanding or preference for. You know, because then you experience more of the world and enjoy more of just existence, you know. So that's sort of my general philosophy, you know.
I really like
Eat
that.
a beet.
Yeah, eat a beet once a year. You know, the perfect example, or springing off of that, is avocados. I hated avocados for years, and then I had an avocado at one point in my life, and now I love them. You know, like we change, and if we continue to shut ourselves off to these things, be they religions, races, genders, political ideas, foods, whatever it is, that if we shut ourselves off to them, we live by these distinctions that divide us.
Right.
We miss out on, like you say, these amazing experiences that we could have.
Yeah, no, like we go back to like the idea of like talking about genre for a minute. Like, you know, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot recently is just the idea that we have these sort of like internalized hierarchies of genre. It's not even just the subgenres, but like I think a lot of us have a sense of what is the best genre and what is the worst genre, and we wouldn't like voice that often like publicly, but that's how we like to like, kind of experience it internally. So you know, it's the subcategorization of the world is pretty thorough, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because it's humans need these labels, these boxes, to make sense of the world. To be able to, we've literally invented labels, imagined labels as a means of categorizing the world into these neat little boxes that we can understand. And so we are the architects of our own destruction, in the sense that we invented race. It doesn't matter that, you know, like that they're the same exact human beings as us. They happen to have more melanin in their skin. I actually asked a doctor one time, because I was genuinely curious. I asked him, is there anything physiologically that makes African Americans different from Caucasian beyond the level of pigment in their skin? And he said, no. There was nothing. Like I brought up sickle cell anemia because that's a problem much more prevalent with the African American ethnicity, and he said, no, there's no difference. Once you get beneath that layer of skin, everything is identical. And so we've quantified things, we've created our own limitations because of this need to understand and categorize things.
Well, but here's the distinction I would make is, when we talk about categorizing things, it is not the same thing as understanding them. I think that oftentimes, like labeling things, categorizing things, like whether it's a genre or a person, does not lead or even imply a deeper understanding. It implies is a cursory familiarity with the subject. And so like there's a big difference between being able to put things in boxes and understanding them as they are.
Yeah, and then on the other side is being limited by those boxes, like people who say, I will never do this. They will never, listen to another opinion. They will never visit another church. They will never do, they'll never go into those boxes that they have decided they don't like, or step out of their boxes that they have defined themselves with. That creates these limitations that can create these antagonisms between people who otherwise would not be at any sort of enmity.
Right. Would you say that there is a group of people that dislikes more things and has something against more things than other people? Like, would you say that I am, and would that be classified under closed-mindedness?
I don't know. Like,
or do we all dislike the same amount of stuff?
I think like everyone has the same urge to feel superior and informed. And I think that those two things make us all about equal in our capacity for prejudice, in general. Like I grew up in the deep South of America, like Alabama and Louisiana and Mississippi, which are famous, obviously, for their problems with racism. But then I moved to the Northeast, and I've encountered the same problems of racism here. I think that there's sort of a sense of there's a sort of region or zone for these problems, but I that's not been my experience. My experience has been like that there's a universality to like the desire to feel superior to, better than others. And I think the classification, the inability to actually get to know people or get to know concepts is pretty universal. I haven't met like a culture yet where I'm like, yeah, you guys are super like naturally enlightened.
Yeah,
I think it's just something you garner from experience.
I've had the same experience in California, and what's weird is you'll go from North Hollywood to Glendale to Hollywood, and they have prejudices against each other, and then they'll have prejudices against people that are moving there, and then they have prejudices against people who are from Texas, and sometimes I wonder if Texas is the one that has less prejudices, even though being in the South, you're known for that.
No. No. Having spent so little time in Texas, they got their prejudices. Don't worry, they are not in a deficit for racism. They've got enough.
They do.
Yeah,
that's very true.
But I like that what you were saying about feeling superior. I in the little comments for this podcast, I said, yay fantasy, boo science fiction, as a joke. I always do that with science fiction. But it's funny that that's sort of the way that I've developed things. Like I have avoided science fiction for X number of reasons. Not that I dislike science fictions or think that science fiction authors are inferior to fantasy authors. Just in my brain, I have formed this opinion that I enjoy fantasy more than science fiction, and some of my favorite books of all time have been science fiction and still are. But I haven't picked up a science fiction book for serious in so many years, because this distinction in my head is that I enjoy fantasy more when maybe I don't.
Well, we should at least have like the space for just taste. It is. There's nothing wrong with preferring a thing over a creative thing over another creative thing. We're not talking about races here, but like if you just are in a phase of your life where you do not enjoy science fiction as much as fantasy, there's nothing wrong with that. Like what I realized is, I think what you're talking about is how you have this sort of knee-jerk revulsion towards things that you have just categorized in a certain way. And so a couple of years ago, I started sort of challenging those assumptions. And, I always had this like idea that this is my hierarchy of genre here. Science fiction is the most earnest, serious, and worthwhile the genres. And then it's fantasy, right? It's very close behind. Then maybe like horror, your horror genre. And then like, I guess like romance, and then maybe like fantasy, westerns are way down here. Like, so it's like this hierarchy of like how these things stack up. And so I started reading things that were outside of my genre. And like, I found this romantic western that I really loved, and I would never have found it if I hadn't stopped buying things based off a genre or based off the assumption of this is the thing that I do enjoy. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. That's a really great way. I think that is the way that we as humans should live our lives in terms of all of these divisions that we've created, these distinctions. Because if we accept these boxes we've created and we never get outside of them, it's a comfortable existence, and comfort is what, humans are creatures of comfort. But if we never get outside them, we'll never experience anything else. And then we can create these antagonisms that don't need to be there. Whereas like you, pushing yourself to try new things, whatever it is the best way to advance as a human, and to find commonalities or, interests in common with people that you might not have done otherwise.
And then I think there are those
yourself by what you do not like. And I think that's like the thing that like all bigots and people who hold prejudice like very close to our hearts have to admit that they are not. Like, they'll say I'm a proud this or I'm a staunch this, but really what they're saying is like I'm not that. And I feel like when I die, I would rather have a appreciation and love for more things in the world than fewer.
Yeah. Very well said. What were you going to say, Stevie?
Oh, I was going to say, well, then there are those antagonisms and those dislikes that we have that we should stay away from.
I'm not talking about like a kumbaya moment for Nazis. Like, I mean, there's things we don't tolerate. I mean, like I'm not like advocating for tolerance of intolerant people. Absolutely. There's some things that people who don't understand the basic tenets of scientific evidence should not be listened to. They should not be catered to. There are. Yeah, it's not like a laissez-faire thing where they're like, well, I guess everyone's about like right, and it's like, it's not that. But I'm just saying, like, where matters of taste or identity are concerned, acceptance, understanding, and exploration of those things is valuable.
Yeah, for sure.
But not ideology. That's a different thing.
But I mean, playing devil's advocate here, ideology doesn't have to define a person. Like we're going with Nazis, right? Nazis, no one can defend that ideology as being something to champion. Now,
No one? I've seen a lot of people being very defensive of it recently.
No one should, let's say. But now let's say the person beneath, right? Because the ideology is basically this layer of armor that they've constructed around their mind and constructed around, who they are beneath. It's really just a shield to protect the fragile inner being who is afraid of being hurt or being lonely or whatever it is, right? If you can get to that person beneath and separate them from that ideology, then you may very well find that there's a genuinely good human being who just was led astray by this belief system or by influences or whatever it is. So even then, definitely not embracing the ideology, but looking at the human behind it or beneath it and saying, okay, now what's driving this? Is there any hope that you can come out of this, or that you can be reached, that we can find some common ground to shatter this enmity, this antagonism, and find a compatible relationship, not with the ideology, with the Nazi part of it, but with the genuinely or the potentially decent human being beneath?
Well, I was a teacher at a community college in a rural area for many years, and I taught English and composition and literature and that sort of thing. And my goal was not to be right. My goal was always to help them understand how they conceived of the world better. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree that demonizing people who have misbeliefs, who have been misled, is not productive. And I think it's possible to be intolerant of an ideology and still tolerant of a person. The person who's been deceived. And that's absolutely what I hoped I did in those times, teaching critical thought as a process, teaching the tenets of research and reasoning, as opposed to here's what you should believe because this is what I believe. Yeah. I was not that guy. But it's we live in this weird time where you have this sort of enlightened centrism, whereby it's well, yeah, but if we all just come to the middle and have our little kumbaya, it's gonna be okay. And I don't think that's right either. I think that you can totally reject a way of thinking, an ideology, and still have tolerance for the person.
Yeah, I guess when it comes to that, I think personally, I would ask myself, is it even worth to even try changing that person? There's so many other people in the world that don't have such a huge shell that I could work on. But my preferred way of trying to change someone's mind is to not try at all, kind of like what you said, Josiah. And that is just to be the person that I would want them to be happy with myself, and show them through inspiration. They could, see me. I could be the example. And then hopefully, slowly, if they are around me, they could change towards that mindset. But, is it worth our time to go after the Nazis and try and change each of their minds? Or, is that just a waste of time when there are others who could be cracked easier?
Oh, it's definitely not about going and converting Nazis to genuine humanity. It's just more the idea that if we have put these Nazis in this little box, then we are limiting ourselves, and we could find genuinely decent human beings beneath or not. We may hate beets, but we're still going to try them, once a year kind of thing. So that openness to the idea that there is more than just the thing. I mean, the truth is that all of these hate groups, they're built around these fragile human beings who are just protecting themselves. And that's something that it's hard to remember in the face of all that hate and all that bigotry and racism and violence and stuff like that. But then remembering the human element sometimes makes it easier to coexist with them.
Yes.
Even if
you reminded me of something. I find it interesting when people will adopt ideologies of others just because they want to feel accepted, even though they don't fully agree with that ideology. And I think we could see that with bronies. People who love My Little Pony, I don't think a lot of them actually like the show. I just think they were deprived of socialness, and, they were outcasts in their high school, but they found some kind of fraternity or
of outcasts.
Of outcasts, yeah. And same thing with people who thought they were wolves. There was a huge thing going on whenever I was in high school where people thought they were werewolves and vampires. I don't think a lot of them believed this. I just think they pretended to believe it so they could be a part of something else and to be accepted.
It's a powerful desire to belong. I think you're absolutely right. Like there's that powerful like want just to be normalized or to feel like you're not alone. And so absolutely, I mean, I think that's the siren call of a lot of subcultures. And then, you know, on the very dark side, you know, bigoted organizations. And this is like the problem that, you know, you're talking about not throwing the person out with the poor idea. I mean, that's like, I have family members like that. I have family members who I love who have these, I think, very wrong-headed beliefs. And I challenge them on that, but I continue to love them because, you know, it's like you say, like, you know, when does it become just a waste of effort? I don't know, but I'm not ready to give up yet because it's like,
but just on the loved ones or on other people as well?
Well, like I said, I mean,
I know it's a hard
question. Taught for a long time to people who really did not hold the same sort of values that I do.
What did you teach?
Just like writing and composition and reading comprehension and literature and poetry and stuff like that.
I would have liked teachers like you because there are a lot of teachers that I had actually at university level. It wasn't community colleges, university level that tried to change my mindset. And then that's when I showed them most push backwards, you know? I think the one that, for example, like I was told that I wasn't allowed to use mankind anymore. And I didn't get it because it was supposed to be, I forgot what they said, humankind. And I was just, it was pushed on me aggressively. And I was just like, just relax, you know? And I think what they took points off my paper and that bothered me. So yeah,
it's sort of like, and the moral pedantry, like we are just like having like points of morality is not how you teach or how you inform the world or how you change people's minds. Like, those are people who want to die with the highest score. And like, I just think that's a wrong way to think about this. We are all going to die with the same score, like the way this world is going. You know, it's like, you know, you need to not worry so much about the sort of like the competition of righteousness and more about like the effect that we all have on each other and on the world.
Well, you know, that's like marriage advice 101 is don't bother being right, you know. And I think that's pretty solid advice to take into life, into these sort of things. Is like, if you're so worried or so determined to be right, you're basically just want someone else to be wrong so you feel superior. So don't worry about being right. Just try to be better.
Well, I think definitely make you a bad husband, and certainly, as Stevie has discussed, a bad teacher. Like, that's not how you should teach.
Yeah. So I'd probably make a pretty rubbish teacher.
So I have to leave in 10 minutes. Did you guys want to do the reading or just continue talking and then I'll just duck out?
No, I'm super excited to do the reading.
Okay. I have
it may be longer than 10 minutes. I didn't like time it. You know.
Okay, I'll just end it about a minute before. I apologize. I have to be somewhere, so
that's fine. So Josiah, why don't you tell us a little bit about this scene that we're at?
Yeah, I typed this up because I'm really awkward to ad-lib this stuff, so forgive me as I read this. So this selection is from Sin and Sins, which is the first book in the Books of Babel. So here's the introduction I gave to the scene, which is about as long as the scene. Thomas Sinland is trying to reunite with his wife Maria in the third level, or ringdom, of the Tower of Babel. He has entered the parlor, a ringdom in which tourists are expected to take part in an ad-libbed play. There is no audience, and the set is composed of both functioning and dummy props. Sinland has been given the role of the butler, Isaac, and has been informed that he and the other three players are expected to improvise a dialogue around a provided plot, which he has been told is roughly this. Mr. Mayfair, a middle-aged man, is consumed with his business affairs. He thinks of his young partner, Mr. Shaw, as the son he never had, and spends much of his time grooming him for the business world. Meanwhile, feeling neglected by her husband, has begun to flirt with Mr. Shaw. Mr. Shaw is forced to choose between his future as a businessman and the burgeoning feelings he has for Mrs. Shaw. Sinlin does not enjoy parlor games. He does not want to be here, but it's his only path forward that he has.
Very cool. I love it. So can I please do it like a what's that, Downton Abbey style voice?
Yes, no. Yeah, I
Perfect.
always end up doing this in a really bad British voice. So
Perfect. Stevie, do you want to narrate so Josiah and I can do really bad British voices?
Sure. Yeah. If I do that, will you keep track of time for me?
Sure.
Okay. Thank
it's
you.
not gonna make 10 minutes, man. I tell you right now, it ain't gonna do it.
I know. Actually, I can see the time. Okay, you guys ready?
Yes. Oh,
Yep.
wait. Josiah, do you want to be Senlin and I'll be the other characters?
Sure.
That's Mr. Mayfair, right? Or no, who's Mr. Mayfair? Oh, you're the butler. The butler guy. Got it.
Ready, guys?
Yes.
Okay. The obnoxious clanging of a bell woke him. He was surprised to discover he'd fallen asleep. One bell, and a bank of many mounted over the stove, jerked up and down, pulled by a cord that disappeared into the wall. Reflexively, he leapt toward the door beneath the bell, still clutching the teacup he'd been meditating upon. He entered a long dining hall, which, except for a complete lack of windows, could have been transplanted from a provincial mansion. A parliament's worth of high-backed chairs ran the length of a dining table that gleamed from a recent polish. Brightly painted shields hung in the spaces between tapestries on the walls. Several more of the brass nubans were set high on the walls. Perhaps they were some sort of air valve. A wide fireplace seethed with enough coals to roast a boar. Though the room was empty, Senlin heard the muffled echo of voices in an adjoining room. Deciding to avoid the other actors in the farce as long as possible, Senlin went to the rack of firewood, selected 2 quartered logs of wood, and angled them carefully upon the grate. He couldn't tell which direction the voices came from. Whoever it was, they sounded passionate. Though whether the voices were raised in amusement or anger, he couldn't say. He was still groggy from his nap. He wondered how long he'd slept. Had the play already begun? He had expected some sort of introduction or preamble. He pulled at the bow tie unconsciously and wondered if he shouldn't just hole up in the kitchen and wait for the melodrama to run its course. One of the dining hall's many doors flew open, and a woman in a formal hoop gown dashed in with her teeth bared in frustration or disgust. He couldn't tell which. At first, she seemed unaware of Senlin, who stood frozen like a rabbit. When she spotted him, she covered her gritted teeth with an unconvincing smile.
Isaac, where is our tea?
She asked. Beyond the open door, 2 men's voices volleyed back and forth intensely.
Didn't you hear me ring for you?
It took Senlin a moment to remember he was Isaac.
Yes,
he said, feeling a little galled. He was used to being the one who rang the bell to call the children in. He'd not spent 6 years at university only to become some stranger's imaginary manservant. But, wishing to avoid an argument, he forced himself to respond in character, though without a shred of enthusiasm for the part.
It's not ready.
She closed the space between them, and he saw her cheeks were flushed. Her hair, dark as a wet slate, was styled high on her head. Her complexion was the caramel color common in the south of Ur. Her charcoal eyes and thick eyebrows were striking, but not in a way that suited the frilliness of her peach-colored dress. She looked like an overfrosted cake. The effect reminded him of how easily a pleasant work of art could be overwhelmed by a glamorous frame. The neckline of her dress was low and crowded. She took the teacup from him, peered into it, and then turned it upside down since it was empty. She gave him a disappointed look and foisted the cup back on him.
Leave the tea for a moment. My husband and Mr. Shaw are arguing in the study. I think it would help to have a calming presence in the room.
Senlin was confused by her theatrics. She seemed physically upset, frightened almost, yet she referred to the others men by their character names. Perhaps she was just a talented actress. It occurred to him that not everyone in the parlor was the amateur he was.
What should I do?
She flung her hands out in a shooing gesture. It seemed more appropriate for steering a wayward chicken than a man.
Just go skulk in the study.
She had slipped out of character. Her accent was suddenly rural. Recovering quickly, she concluded with a more staid,
Please.
She flung her hands out. Oh. Snatching the empty teacup from him, she began using it as a prop, drinking air from it with her pinky finger thrown out. If the act was meant to compose her or convince him that she was composed, it failed. The cup clattered noisily upon the saucer when she lowered it. He felt sorry for her. She seemed almost as out of place as he was. With a resolute little sigh, Sunlen dipped at the waist and said,
After you, madam.
The chamber seemed more a trophy room than a study. Old bugles, helmets, and sabers hung a decoration on the walls. An unwieldy musket, some 6 feet in length, stretched between pegs over the fireplace. He doubted it was real. An imposing stuffed animal dominated one corner of the room, its long brown fur a little matted with age, but still thick. It took Sunlen a moment to identify the beast. It was a giant anteater. The black shock of fur at its throat, its splayed clawed fingers, and Rivet's small eyes were made more dramatic by its sheer size. Reared on its haunches, it stood nearly 7 feet tall. The heads of deer, elk, and moose were featured on another wall. The low firelight made them appear as if they were leering at him. 2 men in dinner jackets argued and paced about a mahogany bar, sometimes stopping to tip the contents of a crystal decanter into their tumblers. Sunlen was surprised to recognize the slighter and younger of the 2 men. It was Mr. Edsel Pining, still with his hands behind his back, bobbing forward as he spoke like a pecking hen. Pining, obviously cast as Oscar Shaw, the young and romantic apprentice, was having a wonderful time waxing lyrical about the illogic of love and the sterility of business. Apparently, he hadn't delayed initiating the crisis at the heart of the play. He had dived right in. The larger man playing Mr. Mayfair was red-faced, gray-bearded, and Sinlin thought alarmingly drunk. Hardly noticed by either man, Sinlin moved to the hearth and began shifting the embers with a poker, adding a brighter, more theatrical light to the 2 men's argument. The woman in the crinoline dress did not stray far from him. She settled her skirts over an ottoman by the fire.
I took you into my home, exposed my accounts to you, and how do you repay me? By pawing my wife?
The man playing Mayfair barked and jerked his arm in punctuation, splashing liquor on the fiercely posed anteater.
I repay your confidence by taking you into my own. I have shown you the ledgers of my heart. And just as a man of business cannot make the price of goods rise or fall as he pleases, a man of the heart cannot dictate how it swings. The stock market of the heart is a fickle thing. Miss Mayfair is mine. This is not business. This is theft,
he said, and surprised everyone in the room by dashing his glass on the floor.
Perhaps we'll continue our conversation when your head has had a chance to clear.
So I actually have to stop there. Unfortunately, I apologize. I do have to get going.
All
Josiah,
right.
Andy, anything else you want to add to the topic?
No, I'll hang out with Josiah a little bit longer, and then I'll do the closing.
Okay, cool. Josiah, it was a pleasure meeting you.
You as well.
Yeah, I'm sorry I have to get off so early.
Boo.
Yeah, I know. Well,
have a good evening.
Yes, thank you, Josiah, and I'll keep in contact through email, guys. If you're listening, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys next Thursday.
Bye.
Bye, Andy. See you guys later.
Bye.
See, we can stop the reading there without Stevie. It's less fun. I've been super curious about this Tower of Babel. Now, everyone knows the biblical, well, not everybody, but a lot of people know the biblical stories. But it seems like it's set in sort of Victorian England. So how does that work?
Oh, there's no logic to it. Yeah, no, it's absolutely what you've described. I mean, it's Tower of Babel set in Victorian England, sort of like technological times. Although as the towers climbed, things get increasingly strange.
So it's sort of like Dante's 7 or 9 levels of hell, but I love that. It's so weird and so cool sounding.
It's so like the original conceit was born out of a couple different points of inspiration, but absolutely Dante, Kafka, those Lewis Carroll, like those guys were all kind of in the mix. It's meant to be a little gonzo.
Yeah. Did you ever think of the Chinese? I don't remember the name of that tower where the guy's got to fight his way up to the top. It's a classic Chinese martial arts movie.
Yeah, no. But that does not mean that I shouldn't be aware of it. Just I'm professing ignorance here.
Okay. There, you can do some Googling afterwards to find it, because I think it's a Bruce Lee movie. I could be totally wrong on this.
No. I mean, and the thing is, like the trope of a tower in speculative fiction is pretty common. And so there's nothing special about a tower particularly. I think there's a lot of important interesting towers in speculative fiction. A lot of like the inspiration that I began with came from the Fritz Lang movie Metropolis, which do you know that one? It's very it's a silent picture. It's way back there, but if you go back and watch that thing, you'll be like, oh yeah, I see he's totally just ripping this off.
Okay,
so there's a lot there.
That's cool. And how many levels is there?
Well, there's some debate.
Okay,
There's some debate. I think that where one to speculate, the number would be in the 60s.
Okay. And how many of those do you have? Like, do you know of? Do you know the levels? This is there and this is there.
Yeah, not all of them. I mean, that's the short answer. I have. There's some people who are world builders, and there's some people who, like me, are fumbling storytellers, and I'm more of that ilk. So the reason that I came up with Sinlin as a character is I needed a headlamp into this darkened cave. So the world is growing as he explores it.
So really the idea, you wanted to tell the tower story, and it just so happened that Senlin was the character that you settled on to tell it.
Yes, that's fair to say. That's
awesome. Like his search for his wife, sure, that's the vehicle that drives the story forward, but really the story is the tower.
Yeah, I mean that's where it at least began. I mean, like, the thing about, like, I'm sure you know this as a writer about characters is the more you write about them and inhabit them, the more you fall in love with them. And so you start off with these sort of like, you are merely a vehicle, but then by like book 2 you're like, but I love you, So it's
totally. They begin to take more agency in their own story, and I don't say that in the sense like they are living, like alternate identities or something like that, but like throughout the course of so this is something that I found a lot in. I've just finished the second book of the Silent Champions, my new series, and the story followed along the outline that I had created, but each of the characters expanded a bit more. They took over a bit more to where the book that I had originally conceived as 120,000 words is now 210,000 words long.
Yeah.
And so they just have more agency in their own story than you had originally imagined when you put them through. I don't know. Are you a discovery writer or an outliner?
I'm a liar. I'm a professional liar. So I've tried to explain like my process to people. I'm like, so I have notebooks, I have a whiteboard, I have a blackboard, I have of course outlines. I have like 20-page outlines. I have more skin books, index cards with different like colored markers, and I don't use any of it. Like all of this is just sort of like to think, and then when I start writing, I kind of forget all of it, and it comes out as it does. So I'm definitely a drafter, and the first 2, 3, 4 drafts are garbage, and then I eventually find what I want to say.
That's interesting.
Hopefully.
I think I'm much the same in the sense that I know what I want the story to do, and then it tends to take to morph. It'll often follow the outlines that I've set, but it goes about telling the story differently than I had intended, and it always turns out so much better for it because you let the characters have their own life in a sense.
Absolutely, yeah. Like I think like my outlines are always the dumbest ideas I have.
That's awesome. So in the first book, because it's 4 books, is each book like a certain number of levels, or does he go through the whole tower in the first book?
Oh no, the first book I think he gets through 3 levels. Not well, but he survives 3 levels. And the second book I think he visits 3 levels. I don't, man. No. He's not going to see the whole tower. I mean, that's the sort of the problem of falling in love with a character. Like, but who wants to march up a tower? I mean, I think that maybe it makes it for a compelling like martial arts movie, but it makes for a miserable book. Like I want to like dig in deeper to each of the levels. So
for sure, at the same time, you could use like you could use levels that are less important to bring out the importance of a higher level that sort of like put him through garbage on level 7 so that by level 8 when he confronts X situation he's in the right emotional state or in the wrong emotional state, whatever it is, like that kind of thing.
I think a more savvy storyteller would use that as a conceit. What I do is just, I turn off the lights and stub my toe as I go up around the darkness. And so, like the first two books were like exploring multiple ringdoms, and then the third book really is set in one ringdom. And
Oh,
there were
wow.
some readers who were like, "This is breaking the formula," and I was like, "Yeah, that's just like the story I
Yeah.
want to tell." I mean. So yeah, I don't feel like one of the things that people have said about the series so far is it's not formulaic, and whatever formula or tropes I seem to establish, I tend to subvert.
And another thing that I have heard, and I'd say that this is probably one of the reasons that I haven't read it yet, is just that the prose is so beautiful that it reads like a classic novel. And so for me, classics
Oh,
are a lot harder to get into now than
yeah.
than they were because I have so little time. So it's almost daunting to take up something like that.
Well, and I understand that, but it's like it's not. I don't think it's impenetrable. It's not like I'm right now reading "Far from the Madding Crowd" by Thomas Hardy, because I like Hardy and I'm sort of a masochist. But I read it so that I can, like, remember what truly dense and chewy prose reads like, and so I'm a relatively well-read guy. But I just had like the dictionary app open, going like, "What the heck was that? I have no idea." Moiety? I've got to look up moiety now. Okay, here
Yeah.
we go. So it's like, my goal is not to shame people with the elegance and obscurity of my prose. That's not my goal. So I hope that you won't be intimidated by that. It just has this sort of like tenor of an H.G. Wells or Jules Verne novel, which were written for everyone. They weren't written for academic aesthetes.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. I mean, I'm sure you've found. Well, no, you seem to be reading a lot more than the average author. Definitely more than I am.
Oh, you're not reading a whole lot right now?
I have not had the time to get into much reading, and I found that my editorial brain is impossible to shut off. So it's like every time I read something, unless it's like like by Brandon Sanderson or David Weber, someone who my brain knows is just like way beyond my level to criticize. If it's reading an indie book by a friend of mine or something like that, it's so hard to shut that off to the point where I can actually enjoy it, because I think, okay, so now he structured a story like this. I don't like this, so I'm going to structure my next story like this. Like it's a different approach to reading that's been hard to get over.
Yeah, no, I do sympathize with that. I mean, like, and I've always been drawn to like older books. I mean, and that's just I'm not a huge contemporary fantasy reader, which is not a positive in our industry, and I know that, but I have not read a lot of the people who are being used as touchstones for my fellow fantasy writers, just because like I read boring. That's my jam.
No, that's good. And I will say that, they say that your writing often reflects what you're reading, and your writing definitely doesn't have the same style as the contemporary fantasy, which makes it stand out from that much more commercial thing. So I think that sort of bridged the gap between the more commercial and literary genres, which is a great place to be.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out. I mean, time will tell.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Josiah, we are pretty much out of time. So why don't you find our listeners/viewers where they can find you?
Sure. If you want to find out more about my books or me, or look at the things that I like to doodle and draw, you can visit me at my website, which is justthebooksofbabel.com. That's all I have right now, because I burned down my social media.
Yeah. Oh, right. It's Babel, right? Babel. Or is it Babel like Babble?
No. Babel. Babel.
Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Well, I will actually be reading a snippet from Senlin Ascends tomorrow night on the Fantasy Focus Facebook group, which you won't be able to watch, but everybody else on Facebook will. So if you are on Facebook, anybody who's watching this, check it out tomorrow night at 5:30 Pacific time. I'll be reading a little snippet and doing terrible British voices to enjoy. I love this.
They're very good.
Can I read this scene tomorrow night? Because I love the idea of the Downton Abbey style scene.
Yes, absolutely.
Perfect.
Knock yourself out.
So much. Okay. Well, that is our time for this week. Tune in next Thursday night for, I believe, Richard Nell is our guest. We're going to be talking about his awesome series. Oh, I think the book is called Kings of Paradise. It's the book that I've heard a ton about. Super excited to talk about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you are listening or watching, hit that like and subscribe button so we can continue to bring you more awesome stuff. Have a great night.